So this is KDH Counseling, and I am KDH Counseling. I guess that's my agency. And I'm doing a podcast that is focused, and it's a video too, that's focused on being more intentional in therapy. And so basically, the more we know about therapy, the better our outcomes are, the better results we'll have. And so this is to educate people about therapy, and every therapist has their own flavor as to why they do it and what they do. So I'm interviewing therapists on this topic, basically. So today I'm Keisha Holmes. I go by KD as well. That's my business name. And this is Marielle Babs. I'm really excited. Well, Bab, huh? No S.
Right. No S.
I always get that wrong. Okay.
Everyone does. It's common.
I know when I look you up, I'm like, no S.
Yes.
But I'm really excited to have her here today because she is someone that shares a lot of the same interventions, and how she does therapy is similar to me. I haven't had anyone on the show so far that does things in the same sort of way. Now, just because we do things similar doesn't mean we're exactly the same,
Right.
but very similar. So welcome, Marielle.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Good. Yeah, thank you. You're welcome. I'm really excited. So can you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So born and raised in Lafayette, Louisiana. I got my master's in science at the local university, UL. I've been a therapist now for, I should have calculated this before today. I think 13 years.
Oh, that's a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, a long time. 12, maybe 13, 12 for sure. Maybe 13. I'm bad at math, which is, I'm in the right field for that.
But it bleeds together. It's hard to remember. It really bleeds together.
It does. In fact, in grad school, I thought I was always terrible at math until I met statistics. And then I went, oh, this one makes sense to my brain.
Well, and you were in science. So were you in biology? Is that what your undergrad?
No. My undergrad is in psychology.
Oh, okay. Okay, then that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah,
And so then you went to, I'm assuming, because are you at LPC or LCSW?
LPC. Mm-hmm.
Oh, so then where'd you go for grad school?
So I went locally to the counselor education program here in Lafayette, and I graduated. Irv Esters was my LPC supervisor, mentor situation after I graduated. He was amazing.
I love him.
From him, he's great. Yeah.
I want to have him on one day. Yeah.
Yeah. I was very blessed with that, very lucky. Yeah. And then let's see, the beginning of my career, I worked at a local nonprofit, the Rape Crisis Center locally.
Mm-hmm.
I did that during grad school and right after. So a total of like 7 years.
Wow.
There. Yeah. And then I moved into private practice after that to a group practice.
So I have a question. How did that impact you? Because that's an intense job. How did that impact you personally, and then how you work?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say personally, I mean, there was obviously like vicarious trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I've, worked through some of that in my own therapy, which has been just amazing to do. But it has an effect on you,
Can we explain to them what vicarious trauma is?
Definitely. So vicarious trauma is where nothing is personally happening to you. I mean, it could happen to someone but in a helping profession, nurses, doctors, sometimes teachers, therapists, obviously, nonprofit, caseworkers, things like that, can experience vicarious trauma because they're around so much suffering and just exposed to so much, and they hear about so much.
Yeah, I did a little video on it once because I think sometimes the news, I remember Katrina, I learned about vicarious trauma when watching Katrina over and over again. I mean, it was so traumatizing to see that stuff. Yeah. So it affects you.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So how did it change how you did therapy or shape how you do therapy?
Honestly, quite a bit. So while I was an undergrad at UL studying psychology, I volunteered there. Just was one of those like, I need volunteer hours. It looks good to get into grad school. And they, posted flyers. I was like, oh, I'll do that. So I went through their training, how to do crisis intervention. They train you on how to do the work that they do. So anyway, when I graduated, my husband actually went and did a year and a half where he played for the NFL, and he was like all over the country.
Wow.
So I was like, well, I'll take a year off of school. I'll pay the bills. So in between, I started working there as their crisis intervention um, caseworker. So I did all of the initial intakes for everyone.
Oh my goodness. This is so intense. And
It
I mean,
was.
I know they give you training, but
I know, but
can't,
looking back at it, I was a baby. I mean, I was 23. I was a baby.
wow.
I know. So I did that for a year, and I think a full year of like hearing the worst and not really being in a role to help. Like that's what was like, okay, I need to be a therapist. Like I need to be able, like, I can't just, I don't know, like it started to irk me that I couldn't do anything to help. And it was just, I was taking in all the bad.
Yeah, you
And
were helpless.
yeah,
That I think that's what vicarious trauma does, right?
yeah,
We feel like we're in the boat with them, helpless.
yes,
I mean, that's what my video was about. Like, how do we make meaning out of these things? And so for you,
yeah,
your meaning was to go back to continue
yeah,
with your education.
yeah, to be a therapist.
So when you went back after you graduated, did you feel more helpful? Did it give you more?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
New.
I mean, it was one of those things when I went back to grad school that I was finally like, it was an accidental discovery, but once I got in there, it was like, oh, all of this is making sense to my brain. Like I had to study the least in grad school because I was just soaking it up. And I should have known. I mean, I was one of those kids that like I took um a high school psychology class, and it was kind of a BS class where there was no homework, like the answers were given to you on tests, but I read the textbook because I wanted to.
I love it. I love
So I
it.
should have known, but
Yeah, we're kind of geeks in that way. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
So from there, you went into private practice, and I'm assuming you had a really good taste of trauma at that point. Like you
Oh
kind
yeah,
of were starting to understand it, right?
right, 100%. At that agency, I had the opportunity to intern there as a preparing therapist. So we were doing a lot of like cognitive processing therapy, CPT. We did some exposure therapy. We did all kinds of things. So I had a good bit of exposure to what trauma was. Um, yeah,
Yeah. How does it shape how you work with trauma today? That exposure to all those interventions.
I don't use any of that stuff anymore,
I love it.
but it did give me a good foundation, a good like um, I suppose exposure to the commonalities that you know
Mhm.
happen with a trauma experience. Um,
Are
yeah.
which are what? What are the commonalities of a trauma experience?
Yeah. So, outside of what you see listed in a Google search of post-traumatic stress disorder, like list of symptoms, outside of that, for the most part, the commonalities that I see, regardless of who's like what the trauma was or
Mhm.
I, how intense or how long the trauma was, it's really rare that I see what I would now call simple trauma, where the client comes in, they've had a pretty decent life, they have like one bad event, and it's just rare. For the most part,
Oh, I know.
trauma is the tip of the iceberg. It's, it's the narrative that we carry that's really, really common. Those like,
Mhm.
negative mindset narratives. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable.
It's
Something
my
bad will
fault.
always happen to me. That's the commonalities. And it's, now gotten to the point where I just jump right in there with the client and like, what are those things that you constantly, you know, say cognitively to yourself or subconsciously just underneath the surface?
That affect you.
Yeah.
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 It builds who you are.
And you think, I know this probably, but you think this comes from their childhood, more
So
from developmental trauma?
sometimes, a lot of times,
Where else would it come from?
it can come from now developmental trauma. I agree with you. If I were to say yeah, it comes from developmental trauma 100% of the time. At some point in our development, whether that be childhood or adolescence or young adulthood, there's usually something originating that gives what we're going through right now extra umph.
Hmm. Yeah.
You
One,
know,
it's something repetitive.
yeah,
I find like when I'm working with people, it's things they don't think that are traumatic.
right,
But I'm like, oh, how did your parent view you? How did you feel? Like, did you feel liked by them? It sounds so simple, but did you think they enjoyed you? And
right,
a lot of times they're like, no, they were disinterested, and it can be because they were working. It's not often malicious, right?
yeah,
But it still shapes how they're viewing themselves and they don't rebound as well. Like,
absolutely.
yeah.
It creates that narrative and it gives
Mhm.
current things that extra umph. And yeah, I do find that a lot of clients are just, they minimize their trauma because they don't see that there was malicious intent. But that doesn't mean it wasn't impactful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, okay, so tell them a little bit because we could talk about this all day and we'll probably do another one on trauma
Good.
just so we can tweak it. We can like really get down into it. But what do you work with now today? What are your specialties?
Right. So when I went into group private practice, because I had such a strong behavioral background, they sort of like started giving me all of their phobia cases, all of their panic disorder cases, all of the OCD cases, because none of the other therapists at the practice wanted to work with that. And I geeked out on all that behavioral stuff. So I was like, and there was a psychologist on staff that worked with kids, and she just didn't work with adults. So she knew how to do all of the things. So I said, hey, if you'll help me, I'll do this with the adults, you do this with the kids. And I did 4 years of that. So that's what I do now. Phobias, still trauma, OCD, panic disorder, anything that you would call severe anxiety, pretty much.
Well, and let's explain to people because I'm a behaviorist. I call myself a behaviorist, right? I do some other things, but like the foundation of how I practice is through behaviors, right? So you said behavioral approaches. How would you explain that to people? Because I think we know what it means, but
Yeah.
most people don't understand what that is.
Yeah, no. Whenever I do explain it to clients, it's with kind of this. I always approach. It's like a puzzle, basically, and I don't mean like the client is my lab rat,
No.
but it is a puzzle. There's a good reason why we're doing what we're doing, even though it has downsides and side effects that we don't like. We're getting something out of it.
Mhm.
It's helping us in some way that trumps the negative effects.
Well, and when you say doing what we're doing, it would be like being phobic of something or having a phobia, like being scared of the
How we
bridge.
respond exactly.
So
It-
how we respond to that.
with avoidance, with
Mhm.
some sort of I don't know, like negating behavior. Like if I do this, then I'll be safe on the bridge. We're doing something either mentally or something like someone could see happening.
And that actually, so behaviorally, you look at those behaviors when you're treating those disorders or those issues, right?
Right, right.
And you try to give them more, I call them helpful. What do you call them? More helpful behaviors?
I use a lot of Socratic questioning
What is
to
that?
Socratic quest. Sorry, I'm using all these terms.
I know.
Socratic questioning is basically where I chisel away at the I'm trying to come up with like a concise way to say this. I kind of ask the right questions to chisel away at the client's like resistance. Not that they're trying to be resistant, but that it's there. They're scared to change. To help them with a like kind of create a light bulb moment of realizing, oh, that doesn't make sense. I see more of the downside now, just to highlight the whole problem. Because we're not going to be motivated to change if we don't see the full effect of what we're doing and why it's actually supporting the problem.
I like the idea of supporting. So the way I look at it often, it's with Socratic questioning, I do like a more like it's rational. I'm trying to look at the
Yeah,
rational side of things. I kind of mix some DBT in that,
for sure.
dialectical behavioral therapy, just to get people to see maybe the consequences of their behavior.
Right.
Because the immediate reinforcer is if I avoid the bridge, I get relief, right?
Right
The
now. Mhm.
Right. But the long term is now I have a phobia of the bridge and I'm
Correct.
just increasing the anxiety around it. So
And
you,
decreasing functioning. Right.
yeah. And so you're trying to like chip away at their resistance or their, like, just to get them more aware of what they're actually doing to
Right.
then address it.
Right.
Because you're actually trying to change their behaviors. That's what makes you
Right.
behaviorally driven.
Right.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
And to feel motivated to change those, because we don't like changing habits. Like human beings don't.
Yes.
So it's very motivation driven. If I don't see a benefit or something that is desirable for me to change this, I won't do it. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. That's a really good explanation. Again, we'll probably do another video on this because me and you could talk about this all day long.
I
So
know. Good.
yeah. So you do that, you do trauma work.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do EMDR now. I don't do any of the exposure based old trauma model stuff. I do EMDR, I do image transformation therapy,
Mhm.
more of those experiential based approaches. Um, yeah.
Yeah. I like that. And did you do the DBR training?
I have that scheduled in about 4 weeks. I'm pretty excited.
I want to pick your brain about that. Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
excited about that too. So, okay. So, and now in your private practice, what's one of the things that because you work with teens and adults?
I do. I work with high school and up.
Okay. What is one of the things that you're really excited about? People don't know
Yeah,
this about therapists, but we like geek out on learning and always have something that we're really into that we're kind of like chipping away
right.
at. Yeah.
100%. I feel like it's a hyper focus and it changes from time to time.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
Which I
Um,
think is interesting.
yeah. So my current obsession,
Yeah.
right? I have been really geeking out on the deeper version of boundaries work, because so many of my clients are becoming more aware of what boundaries should look like. They're getting a better concept from, I think, who they follow on Instagram, helpful like self-help things that they're consuming. So they're coming into session with a better mindset, like a better goal of what boundaries would be good for them. But the deeper work is how do we actually apply that? And so I've been like really geeking out on helping clients go beyond what's in a self-help book, to
So
apply boundaries. Yeah.
give a definition of what a boundary is.
It's an action.
Mhm.
So many of my clients are like, what are you talking about? What do you mean it's an action? And so that's part of the reason I'm geeking out on it. It's very behavioral. Um, so many people feel like a boundary is something that we simply ask for. When I ask a client to tell me what it sounds like or show me what it sounds like when they set a boundary, they model a request.
That's so interesting. And it's
It's
not debatable.
no, it's something that I'm letting you know is going to happen. And then we follow through on it. It's
Correct.
an action. And then the action is what trains and teaches and shapes the environment to make it healthier.
I love that. Because I look at it too as like an internal
Yeah.
and an external,
Yep.
but it is a behavior. And I guess I wasn't
Behavior.
specifically saying that. Um,
With
so
both internal and external boundaries. It's a behavior internally too. It's
correct.
our self-talk. It's the way that we let go of the thinking of the thing after we've applied. Yeah.
Because there's such a reaction.
Such a guilt trip that can happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is outdated because sometimes I'll tell my clients I think it's outdated information, but I still address it. So I
But
talk about enmeshment. Enmeshment is where you don't
mhm,
know where you end and where your family begins, or where you end and your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever begin. And
right,
so it's like this. And healthy is this.
right.
But if you don't know where people end or begin, then when you do what's healthy, it actually feels wrong.
It feels disconnecting.
Yes.
Yeah, like a big risk. It can feel like an abandonment too.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Like they won't feel as close to their family if they're not in their family's head trying to figure out what they need or want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That their role, their purpose, the reason that they're lovable is tied to some of that.
Oh my gosh, it's so true.
Yeah.
So their sense of self.
Absolutely. The role that they were, that they took, that they were given, that they slipped into in the relationship.
How do you think trauma plays into this?
Yeah, it does. It overlaps a lot. And even like mild trauma, even just small stories that clients will have of like, and they kind of minimize it when they say it. Oh, well, yeah, I guess whenever I was young, this would happen. And I guess I just dealt with it by doing this, and it always worked. Okay, that created an impact.
Like what kind of impact?
That taught you that you weren't lovable unless you did that. You weren't safe unless you did that. And I'm seeing a lot of that in my perfectionistic clients, and a lot of my people pleasing clients. It's to me, and from a trauma perspective, you know how we have fight and flight and freeze? Not often enough we talk about fawn. Fawn is that
Mhm.
social submission that we do, and that's what people pleasing and perfectionism falls under. And then that shapes our boundaries.
It's so true. And that fawning, I
Yeah,
think when you start looking at it as a response, like fight, flight, or flee
right.
are easy to kind of see.
It
And
is.
it's like, I guess, a type of fleeing, but the fawning is like that active flee, I guess. I don't know. It's trying to please. But I
It's
think
similar to the freeze. It is.
when you break it down, though, it really is powerful for people to see that it is an intense emotional reaction to something you're not liking.
Right. Right.
And so, yeah,
Absolutely. So I don't know. Yeah, it's just fascinating, and it does all overlap, which, my behaviorist puzzle brain loves.
I say the same exact stuff about puzzles, though, because it
Oh,
is like
that's
a
so funny.
puzzle. And I'm trying to figure out,
Mhm.
like, okay, if we address this part,
Yes.
so we address the way mom and dad viewed you, because that's where I'm starting to really get into like
Yeah.
that. It's more relational, right? So how you were viewed, and if you fawned,
Right.
you were reinforced, maybe not on purpose, but I think obedient children
Mhm.
hate even saying it, but people, take pride if their child's
Yeah,
obedient.
absolutely. And so it's rewarded by our environment.
I know.
I
It
know.
makes me sad.
I know. Which makes it exceptionally hard to break that cycle and to learn that they're worthy without that. Um, they would have survived with a different strategy. They had
Yeah.
chosen a different one.
Well, and I think in my office, especially this week, I've been really on this kick of like, you can trust yourself. Like
Yeah.
so they might fawn, but before they fawn, before they do like that dance of like, let me please you,
Yeah.
they often have an idea of what they want to do.
Yeah.
Right. So they have a sense of like, I want to back
Yeah.
away.
Absolutely.
And so I'm like, oh, that's healthy. Okay, you can reinforce that, right? You
It's
can.
like, that makes a lot of sense. And that's like one of those things that I'll talk about in session where we have two knowings. We have like the gut reaction that wants to just autopilot the situation, and the second knowing that is our like growth self trying to do something different. It's just cool.
Tell me more about that. I really like that. So you have the knowing of how we were raised. Is that how you're looking at it? Or
Autopilot,
okay.
the gut reaction, the part of us that learned A plus B equals C, right? And if I do this, I'm going to get this result. But then there's the second knowing, the part of us that's like been growing and experiencing different healthier relationships. We know better.
And so trusting that knowing versus the learning knowing.
Mhm.
Because the learning knowing is emotional.
It is.
It's from a lot of different places
Yeah.
in our development, and it might not be the best choice. I hate using the word healthy, but it might just not be
It
the
might not
best
be
choice.
adaptive anymore.
Oh yeah, that's good. Adapt.
So I talk to my clients a lot about like, is that current software? I use the software metaphor a lot.
Oh, I love that.
Like, is that current software? That software made a lot of sense when you were 6 and had less agency,
Mhm.
but now you're 16 or 26 or 36. So even if the conditions around you are the exact same, you are not the same person as you were when you were 6.
I
Does
love
that
that.
software still make sense?
Yeah. And so acting opposite.
Yeah.
that software and trusting that inner, whatever that second voice is,
Right,
which is your more developed self.
right. Sometimes I'll ask clients like, okay, so you get guilt tripped by your family when you say no, and you've learned that from when you were little. But what would happen if you, for the very first time as a 20-something-year-old, got guilt tripped? If it had never happened before and it was happening for the first time, how would you respond?
What do they say?
That is their current adaptive software. They always give a response that makes sense for a 26 full of independence and agency, how they would respond if it was the very first time. And that helps them connect that, okay, it's just this old learning and software. And I would choose this action. I can visualize myself doing this action if it had no history.
I love this.
Yeah, it's fun.
And
It's so
and
fun.
I know, well, and it helps them,
Yeah,
I think, with no judgment,
right,
choose their authentic self, for lack of a better word, right?
right.
And assert it, because you really want them to like live it, to do
Yeah,
actions in their life that are in line with their authentic self.
absolutely. Spot
All
on.
right. So do you ever have to do trauma work to get them there?
Hmm. Yeah.
Why? Can you explain why? What is it about their trauma history that affects their?
Yeah. So our body responds. Our body incorporates that prior learning. Our body has a memory of the way that it's always felt. And that sort of like builds up like a callus, where it gets more potent and more potent and more potent and more potent. And so the more and the more repetitive, let's use the same example of guilt tripping. If we've had 2,000 repetitions of guilt tripping when we say no,
Mhm.
the body has had 2,000 repetitions of the same experience, the same like sensory processing experience. And that is the stuff that we can't outthink.
Do you think, well, and do you think that that creates like a neural pathway in our brain? Just
100%.
because we've done it, that's like where OCD kind of comes into this, right? Compulsively, we've done it again and again.
Absolutely.
And so with trauma, you're able to address maybe those feelings and that experience in a, I call it slowing it down, like you're
Yeah.
slowing down time,
Right.
and then it resolves it or it makes it easier. How do you?
Absolutely. When we address the somatic aspect of this memory, it 100% makes it easier for those two knowings to get on the same train track.
'Cause then you don't have, I call it the baggage, right? You don't have the emotional baggage like blocking you, but it's all those years of repetition. You
Right.
don't have that anymore. So now it's easier to say no. And
Right.
if they give you the guilt trip, you don't have that emotional reaction to
Yeah.
it. It's kind of
You
like,
have
well,
that like that awful feeling in your gut, that twisting knot in your gut, right? Like that's gone.
yes. Do you, oh, so that, okay. So, slowing down time. So you're learning to set boundaries, right? You're like, okay, I'm going to tell these people no in my family. You get the gut wrenching. You're like, I did it anyway. I did like positive self-talk, whatever, to make it through it.
Right.
Do trauma work. Do you think it totally resolves it or just makes it a little easier for you to keep your behaviors the same
Uh,
until your body catches up?
that's client based in my experience. I would definitely not say it's a one way or the other.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's client based.
Well, and I wanted to ask that because I feel the same way. And I don't
Okay.
want people to think that it's like every person that does the trauma work, then all of a sudden it's like so easy.
Right.
Because there could be like 1,000 memories. Like we could be focused on like mom and dad or maybe grandma or whatever, right? And so, but it's actually more powerful in your relationship with your significant other. And
Right.
so it's just it's tricky.
It is because I mean, 2,000 repetitions also have cousin repetitions,
Yes.
you
And
know?
you
Like,
felt closer to that cousin. And so it was more impactful in some way, or you were isolated from friends.
right, right, right.
There's so many factors.
There are.
That's why it's a puzzle, because we're trying to kind of help them
Exactly.
clear it out so it's easier to say no and hold the no. What are some other boundaries besides saying no?
Ooh, besides saying no, the main components of boundaries, if we're talking about like, so I differentiate for clients, sounds like you do too, where we differentiate an internal boundary versus an external boundary. An external boundary is where we need something in our environment to be different. An
Mhm.
internal boundary is where we need to adjust our expectations. We need to adjust um, the permission that we're giving or not giving ourselves. We need to adjust standards, those kinds of things. That's internal stuff. Um,
What
but
do you mean by standards?
standards, oh, that's, well, if I'm working with someone that has perfectionistic standards,
Mhm.
though that's a lot of internal boundaries work. Um, that they have complex expectations of self as well as perceived expectations or specific expectations of others,
Mhm.
that they have to reset different boundaries with. So they have to train their environment to expect different things from them, and they have to give themselves permission to change those expectations of self.
That's some hard stuff. I think that's
Yeah.
why it's trauma,
Yeah,
because that's tough. I mean, that's their own reward system within themselves.
absolutely.
Okay. And then external ones. What do external ones look like?
Those are categories of things like, what are your boundaries with your time?
Mhm.
What are your boundaries with your energy? What are your boundaries with your, let's think.
I'm
Those are big
writing it
ones.
down.
Energy and time, I would say, those are big umbrellas that a lot of specific boundaries fall in.
We'll break it down because I wrote them down. I don't want us to forget. So break down the time ones.
Yeah, so boundaries with time would be, oh, let's see, external ones having to do with who gets your time, how much of your time they get, and like what time of day do they get your time. If you have a relative that is messaging you and you get that like gut feeling of, oh, they messaged me, that's a question of like, is do I give them my energy right now? Do I have energy for that right now? Do Am I ever going to have energy for that? Do I have time for that right now? Do I have time for that later?
But this is
So,
where trusting themselves is so important because you get the gut. It's not bad. People will
right?
reflect on that. Like, why am I feeling this way? You got, I don't know. Let's explore it
That's right.
and trust it.
And trust that gut again, because there's a reason that you're getting that ugh feeling. Um,
Yeah. So time with others and then self-imposed time, right? Because like people will like work crazy. I'm like, what?
absolutely. The time that you expect of yourself, that's an internal time boundary.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Good one. Yeah.
That's an internal time boundary. Clients will sometimes like, recently I had somebody that was like, I am just really struggling with my boundaries of time with like when I go to bed, when I expect that of myself, when I get up in the morning. And we really needed to dig into that because turned out that this person's messages of why their bedtime wasn't like they were believing it wasn't functional because they had been told they should go to bed at a certain, it wasn't really dysfunctional for them.
That's so interesting because I think, a lot the external messages we get, right, affect us,
Right.
but also sometimes that bedtime can be like a almost like some of my clients I'll stay up late, the younger ones, right? They're
Right.
like, that's me time.
Right.
That's when I get to disconnect from the world and read a book or whatever I want to do, play a video game,
Yep.
it can be a self-care time. So I think
Absolutely.
exploring that with them because they need that, even though maybe we don't want them staying up till 2 in the morning, they
Sure.
probably need to increase their time. It makes sense.
Yeah.
So in implementing that with others by saying no.
Well, that was kind of an internal boundary. They didn't need to do anything with another person.
Okay.
That it wasn't causing any dysfunction in their life, but they just needed to change their expectation of self. They needed to give themselves permission to stay up till midnight, wake
Mhm.
up at 6 in the morning. They felt rested for the day. They were doing fine,
I love that.
you know?
Well, and what about in their world? How would they be setting these boundaries? And I was going to say requests. That's so interesting. Setting these boundaries in their world.
Yeah, that just has to do with what, in terms of like an inventory of what is taking their energy, what is zapping them the most. I mean, a
Mhm.
lot of times our work, if we work, places, its own imposed time schedule. We don't always have flexibility to assert, you know, when we
Right.
work best. We can't like go into an interview and be like, oh, I really work best from like noon to 4. Um, can't do that.
But we can adjust.
We can't, but possibly we have a little bit of flexibility to know I work best noon to 4. So I may need to expect certain tasks to occur during those hours where I'm really firing on all cylinders. And other tasks I may need to front load in my day. So arranging what, our brains do a little easier with our time, even we have a little bit of control there, a little bit of flexibility sometimes. So,
Well, and I think this is interesting because I'm thinking it's planning. As you're
right.
saying it, this is a lot of planning and how our day-to-day life can be chaotic
Yes.
or like more effective, more functional for us. And I
Right.
mean, it's taking into effect like yourself, your needs. I mean, it
Right.
hits on a lot of,
It
because if
does.
you're not important, you won't be able to change these things. But if you consider your needs and your sense of self-important, you'll be able to do this. And the end result is a more functional life.
I've been lately kind of saying that made me think of what I've been saying lately. I've been saying that creating healthy boundaries is really about making a life that you have to cope with less.
So true. So how does this play out? Okay, because one of my intense things lately that I'm really focused on people's sensitivities to
Mhm.
stimuli.
Mhm.
So whether it's light, noise,
Yeah.
textures, like environments that
Right.
can overwhelm a person and create anxiety, depression, like how do we set boundaries to compensate for that? Do you see that in your office?
A ton. A ton. I my clients are kind of trained. A lot of them know that we can adjust the lighting in here. If
Mhm,
it's too bright, and I don't keep it, this is the brightest it's ever been. I usually keep it more dim,
mhm.
but if the sun is out, we may need to adjust that a little bit.
Oh,
There's
so you real time it. You real
yeah,
time this office. We're going to practice setting boundaries
because
now.
because it's trial and error. And if they can't set a boundary with me and express a need with me, how are
Mhm.
they going to be able to do it in the real world?
Agreed.
And if I ask them like, hey, let's assess how you're doing right here. Do you have any needs that are not being met? If they branch out to say, yeah, I'm actually like little thirsty, or actually like I haven't been to the bathroom all day, I'm just realizing. That's real time where they realize, oh my gosh, until you made me think of how I'm doing, I didn't think about that all day.
That's crazy. I see that with therapists. It's kind of interesting.
Yes.
They won't eat or think crazy stuff. I'm like, we're a head and a body. We're
I know.
both. We have to
So
remember.
a lot of boundaries is like trial and error. It is
Okay.
a lot of trial and error, figuring out and adjusting. Like we're not going to get the boundary right the first time. It's rare.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is so what are the broader goals? You do it so similar to me. So like
Cool.
when I've interviewed people before, they're very focused on the broaders, right? And I
No.
see the parts. I'm like, "Okay, let's
Yeah.
change this. Okay. So
Yeah.
what is the broader goal for boundaries? Like, what do you think it provides people?
Overall, probably it provides people with hmm,
I know.
peace.
I know.
You know, I was really trying to make it concise. It provides people with the opportunity at peace.
And but the middle ground of it is going to be difficult, right? Like the
Turmoil.
yes, the ultimate goal is peace,
Yes.
but in order to get there, just like ERP,
Yes.
you have to coexist with that
You do.
uncomfortableness and know you're doing the right thing. But it's tough.
Yeah. But that's part of the journey, I think, habituating to
Mhm.
that discomfort. When we say no to someone, there's habituation that has to happen because we've been so trained to feel guilty. We've been so manipulated before, or we've been so just even from our own perceptions, the expectations we give ourselves, we've manipulated.
Mhm.
So it takes habituation, which means it takes time and going through the mud, like you said.
Well, and that's where I think as therapists, we just have this opportunity to support them in a positive way, like, because it's hard to do on your own. People often will read self-help books. They're like, I should be able to do this on my own. That is really hard to go against the whole system
Yeah,
of your life and
yeah.
do it differently, because people, when you start saying no, they don't like that.
No, they don't.
It's not often met with like, oh my goodness, good for
Right,
you. They're
right.
like, mm-mm.
No, and I do prep my clients for the response. There are two healthy ways that people can respond when you start setting a boundary. They can either respond with support, which is, of course, what we want, but they can also respond with negotiation, and that's not always unhealthy. So if you're setting a new boundary and someone replies with, I'm not sure that that works, but they kind of see what you're trying to get at and they offer another solution,
Mhm.
that's also okay. You may not be able to get everything that you want, but sometimes that other person recognizing that you're trying to meet a need, can feel different.
I like that. So you can
Yeah.
either support it or negotiate.
Right.
And, often, because I work with, you do too, with clients that are internalizers, I tell them you don't have to have an answer
Right.
today. If someone's doing that, you can
That's right.
wait, let me think about it.
I
So
love
you're
that.
not knee jerk fawning, right? Like,
Right.
let me please them. You can decide if it's good for you and then stick with that.
100%.
I love this. I hope it inspires people. And I want to say this last piece too, because I don't think boundaries are just about saying no. Sometimes it's a request. We're requesting something of other people, like, don't talk to me that way, or, you
But
know,
I think that the deeper work with boundaries is that we have to follow that through with something that we intend. If I say that hey, if I'm a I don't know, like a boss or something, and I need my employee to come in on time, I cannot expect that a request is going to be enough all the time. So if I say, I need you to come in on time, which is 8 o'clock, I have to follow through with, if you're not on time at 8 o'clock, I'm going to write you up. After 3 write-ups, we're going to have this next action occur. There has to be some line in the sand that is in our hands.
correct. Well, and it's making me think of the DBT, like
Yeah,
saying no and then
right.
requesting, right? And
I love
so,
that worksheet, the 1 through 10.
yes,
It's so good for amping up what we're inching toward, but they're all actions.
yes. And it is about how firm is this, right? Like, if I'm saying, hey, on my date night, I want to go to this restaurant, and Steve says, no, I'd rather do this. That might not be something that I'm like, but if I really want sushi, I might be like, no, we're going. But I think I know it's kind of silly, but there
Oh,
are other
yeah.
things that are non-negotiable, right?
Right,
Like, I might be requesting that someone not scream at me. No one
right,
scream at me because I don't put up with that, but I might
right,
be requesting that, right? And so, but that's a non-negotiable.
right,
It's interesting. Okay.
right. Absolutely. So we really, at the end of the day, have to be willing to create those non-negotiables, which means we have to be willing to walk away from something that is violating those.
That's hard.
Very hard, very
Oh,
hard. Especially when, and the most resistance I get are when people come in and they're wanting to set boundaries, but they know that just about everyone in their inner circle, they're going to lose those
mhm.
people when they set these boundaries.
Which I was going to then say, I wonder how many people have a relationship. I call it a relationship, but basically have a trauma history where they felt alone and empty, right? So those feelings of absence are motivating
Absolutely.
because they don't want
Absolutely.
to have that again.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good work. Well, so we're running out of time, but I love this. I could have kept going.
It's just good to visit.
So is there anything else that you wanted to share based on the boundaries? Anything else?
No, other than it's probably the single most, I guess, foundation important. If any adult were to like set a goal to do something different in their life, my take on boundaries is that it can have the biggest impact. It's one thing that can have the biggest impact.
How good are you with boundaries? Because I didn't even ask.
I have gotten better and better. I don't think my work is done, but I mean, compared to the baby that I was when I started this journey back in, I don't know, whenever I was 21 to now, um, almost 20 years later, I'm a whole different person.
It's crazy because I remember it being hard for me when I was young.
Yeah.
I'm almost like I have to watch sometimes because I'll just like, nope, nope, you're gone. Like I'm very,
Yeah.
when I set them, there's certain things that are not negotiable for me.
Right. And the lack of that guilt, like the fact that that doesn't show up anymore. Oh,
I still do get sad though sometimes because I want to be
yeah,
close to people and that piece,
absolutely. And
you
we accept
know.
that as part of it. It is
Mhm.
sad when something doesn't work out the way we want it to.
That's so true. And we miss people, things
I
like that.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Marielle.
Loving me.
I'm so excited. We're gonna do more. And I'm gonna put a little thing at the bottom with how to contact you.
Sounds
Okay.
great.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Keisha.